Okay, everybody. Hello, hello. This is our first podcast of 2022, and I'm so excited to welcome my friend and amazing woman, Theresa Lambert. And I'll tell you a little bit about her before we dive into this wonderful conversation. Theresa is an online business strategy coach with an impressive hotelier background in luxury hospitality in the #1 ski resort in North America. She supports women entrepreneurs and coaches to get their first clients or scale to 6 figures and beyond through strategic, tangible, and practical support. In 2020, Theresa became the best-selling author of her book, Achieve with Grace, A Guide to Elegance and Effectiveness in Intense Workplaces. And she is also a speaker and the podcast co-host of Dissecting Success. And I just so happen to be a guest on Dissecting Success on last week's episode, or has it even been a week yet?
No, it's actually been you were yesterday's episode. So
Was
you
it
were
yesterday?
Yeah, so we had you as our first guest and first episode in 2022. How amazing is that? Yeah.
That's awesome how
Level
it worked out that way.
I love it. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So it's episode, I think, 54. If you want to go and check out the Dissecting Success podcast, which I'm sure you can find on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Absolutely.
And listen to that episode. It was a really good one for sure too. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited and I'm thrilled to start the year off having this conversation with you.
Yeah. Okay. We're just going to dive right in and talk about manifestation, because I know you are in the world of energetics and you're into the feminine woo-woo stuff just as much as I am. And that's why I love to have these conversations, because I just see women moving into the entrepreneurial space more and more and more, which is wonderful and beautiful. But there's that divide, between the feminine world and the masculine world in business. And it's interesting watching, women navigate those two sides of energy, and obviously manifestation has both of those energies in it as well. So my first question for you coming into the entrepreneurial space yourself was, what was your first sort of experience with the masculine and feminine? Like, did you go full masculine at first when you got into entrepreneurship, or did you go straight into the feminine sort of energetic side?
I love this question, Millie. I actually have always been more in the masculine side. And what led me to becoming an entrepreneur and starting my coaching business was actually through experiencing severe burnout over and over in my hotel career, and realizing that that really wasn't a sustainable way to succeed. Like, I had the big title and I had the big paycheck and I had the recognition and all these things, but it really didn't feel aligned internally. And so my path to healing from burnout led me down the path of feminine energies, mindset work, energetics, understanding that there is such a thing as a feminine and masculine energies, because to be honest, I didn't know. I really didn't know. It wasn't a thing that was on my radar at that time. And when I became an entrepreneur, when I jumped in it full time, I did it with the intent that I was going to build my business to eventually 8 figures, which I'm sure will happen one day as I'm manifesting my way through this world. But doing it in a different way, doing it in a way that really balances both, right? Yeah. Having that feminine and the masculine. And it's easy for me to just fall into the masculine, the doing, and also the wounded masculine, because I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about the feminine and masculine energies, but it's also understanding that both work so beautiful together, like the yin and the yang. And so how can we embrace both and honor both and show up for both, rather than, just having one take over? But I feel like in this industry, specifically too around coaching, there's such a debate too around that, right? And it's like there's like the team energetics that's like just be in flow, feminine energy, don't do. And then there's like the masculine like energy like types that are like strategy, you gotta do, you gotta hustle. And it was really interesting because sometimes I felt myself pulled, you know, to one camp and the other. And so coming back to always marrying the both is really where I find I do most of my work around those energies.
And is that what you work with your clients as well?
Yeah, so really through strategy and actually implementing strategies and systems in your business, I have found that I can feel more held and supported. And when I feel held and supported, I have the space to be creative and be more in that feminine flow. So it's really implementing some foundational systems and strategies that can hold you, but that also align with who you are and your strengths.
Yeah, I always imagine the masculine and the feminine as like the masculine is like the riverbed, right? That holds the flow of the water, and the feminine is the stream, the actual flow of the water through the riverbed. And you couldn't have one without the other, right? They must be together. And I want to backtrack for 1 minute. You said the wounded masculine. And I'm curious to hear, and I'm sure there's many people here who maybe don't know what that looks like or what that means to have a wounded masculine. Can you expand upon that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that wounded masculine is really rooted, and I'll give you my explanation, and I'm sure there's a million different explanations out there, but for me, it's that persistent overdoing and need to prove something, whether it's proving your worth, whether it's proving that you can do something, whether it's proving that you can be the hardest working, toughest person in the room. It's a very like ego driven, result driven approach to achieving anything that you want to achieve.
What would be healthy masculine then?
To me, it's really being intentional with the actions that you take. So really understanding not only your vision and where you want to go and how to possibly get there, but actually honoring your own process and making that journey really more, I want to use the word joyful, but it's really enjoyable. I feel like is more like really embracing the journey being on and taking action intentionally towards what you want, and really having these checkpoints where you're more looking ultimately for purpose and fulfillment through the process of doing, and the result comes to you through that action of doing rather than forcing the doing.
Yes, yeah, it's a little bit of like a non-attachment to outcome. And when I think about healthy masculine, I also think of that like that providing and the safety, sort of like those two energies. So you're providing these structures and structure as well, right? Like providing structure for yourself and providing that structure that within you can feel a certain amount of safety, right?
Yeah. And I feel like that's such an amazing point that you're making. And I often like refer to it as that support. Like that's the word that I use to describe it. But it's true. It's really that safety. And when we feel safe and supported and like held, I love this riverbed, held in the riverbed. It's like we flow, like things just work naturally without you having to force them there. It's really that. Yeah, I mean, it's a strange feeling for me still, coming from this place of, no, you just force it and you just do it and you just put your head down and it doesn't matter what comes up, you just gonna make it happen, to no, like what's the support so you can almost like, do you know that exercise where they stand you up and somebody's behind you?
Trust, yeah.
And they ask you to like fall back and trust. That is the feeling for me of feeling safe and supported.
And it's knowing that you have that structure is there to back you up, right?
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like providing a container for the chaos, you know, because the the feminine is like very much chaotic in a sense, right? It's like that creative power, which can be very chaotic. So giving it that like safe space to like, here, you can create within this container and feel held while doing so. So I really like those visuals. Okay, I want to backtrack again for a minute and come back to your story of how you transitioned from this, well, is it, do you call it like a hotel world corporate? I guess it is, it's probably kind of corporate, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a luxury boutique hotel. So,
Okay.
in the hotel world, we call it boutique rather
Yeah.
than corporate, but
Yes.
it still has it still has a corporate feel to it. You can
Yes.
call it what you want. It's just a boutique corporate style of doing things.
Yes.
It's more, we were a smaller, family owned hotel. So it was a little bit different in the sense that there wasn't a global structure to hold it, but it very much still follows frameworks
Right.
of corporate.
Okay, so tell us a little bit of the story of your transition, because I'm sure there's so many people out there that are in these positions who see the freedom available within entrepreneurship, and they're really interested but scared to make that leap.
Yeah, and I'm going to start by saying that it took me 3 years to ultimately make that decision. So it wasn't like a thing where I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. I came into coaching because I was burnt out. Nobody could quite figure out what was going on. This was like, my gosh, I want to say like 5 years ago. And like, it's been a while since I was really at rock bottom. And I signed up for a health coaching certification because I was trying to self-help myself. I wasn't signing up because I wanted to become a health coach or a coach or anything like that. I just was like, I need to figure out what is happening with my body because I
Yeah.
was a hot mess.
How to take care.
Yeah. And I was like, my body was fighting and it wasn't feeling good. So I knew I needed to make a change. And so the best way I knew how to do that was to gain some knowledge that I didn't have. And this is really where it started for me. And as I went through, as I got introduced to the world of coaching, as I got introduced to the world of manifestation, of energetics, I was like, what the heck is this? Like, what is mindset? Like, it's funny because you think that I would have known it. And the truth is I didn't. I had no idea how to operate differently. I more and more opened myself up to a different opportunity for me in my future. So instead of remaining at the hotel that I was or growing with the company, I saw myself actually working on my own, like so many people out there that are in careers. But, those golden handcuffs, I will tell you, are very shiny and very beautiful. So the thought of leaving the safety of a job like that was a huge, 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 huge like force that was almost like holding me back, right? And I really needed time and space to make that decision. And knowing now also that I'm a manifesting generator, 3-5 with an emotional authority, I need time to make decisions. And this was such a major life decision for me. And I didn't know this back then, but now looking back in hindsight, I can see how I went through massive emotional waves around trying to make this decision to move on. I was in this structured environment. I had a lot of input on the vision and where we were heading and what we were doing, which was exciting. But at the same time, there was a lot of like, no, we got to do it this way or we got to do it that way. And more, I realized that I was looking for more creative freedom.
Yeah.
And I was like, this just doesn't feel like it's just like, it was, this sounds bad, but it was just a job. It was just a job. It just didn't give me that fulfillment. There's parts of it that I loved, and there was parts that don't. And so 2019 rolled around, and my word, I pick an intention and a word that sort of helps me like guide myself through the year. My word in 2019 was spaciousness. And so I started to think about what feels like spaciousness. How would I show up if I had spaciousness in my life? And so I started to claim more space, more and more space for myself, actually taking weekends off, not checking my emails, implementing more boundaries. And it was also the year I got married, and I was like, I'm taking 5 weeks off. End of story. And I was very clear with the ownership and my team. I was like, I'm taking these 5 weeks off and I'm not going to be available. Like, unless it's like the place literally falls down, you can handle it on your own. And so I got everything set up, and what it ended up creating was a tremendous amount of space to really realize that there is so much more out there.
Yeah.
And so I think it just allowed me the separation to step away, you know, when you're not in it so much anymore. And I remember getting to the last couple of days in our honeymoon, we were in Hawaii. And I remember that I never not wanted to go back to something so much. Not because it was a horrible place to work, like not at all. Like I loved my team. It's a stunning property. Like if you work in a hotel, that is a beautiful place to work. We were doing well, things were going great. I have an incredible relationship to this date with the owners, but it just was like everything in my body and mind was like, no.
Yeah, it was just an internal hit, right?
Yeah.
For you, sacral, right? Like,
yeah. So I had ridden that emotional wave for so long. And when that hit came, it came hard. And so what ended up happening is I came back to work and was given an opportunity to step into a VP role and work only 4 days a week. So the owners knew at the time I was coaching already. So they wanted to give me an opportunity to do both and to continue to work in their business and help them grow their other businesses. So there was an opportunity on the table. And so it came down to making a choice. Do I want to take a chance on a new role or do I want to leave? And, you know, I never forget it. I came into work and I was like, I'm out. And I picked up the phone and it was 9:30 in the morning where our morning huddle happened. And I stayed back in the office while everybody went, and I picked up the phone and I called the owner and I said, well, I guess I'm not taking the job and I'm out. And that was like, and I hung up and it was like two emotions, sadness and like, what the heck did I just do? And then also this like excitement about what can be possible. And
exhilaration.
So, yeah, that was like the beginning of the end. 3 months later, I left and yeah, haven't looked back since. So it took a long time to make this decision.
Yeah, and it sounds like there were steps. You know, you learned a little bit more about boundaries, and you learned about, like, you know, what you really wanted, and you gave yourself space to experience that, and you took a step back, you zoomed out. I say that a lot inside of my programs and with my clients, is that we have to zoom out. You know, we really need to zoom out, because when we're so like hyper focused on what's right in front of us and what's going on with our five senses, it's really not a clear picture. It's really not a clear view. You know, that's why when there's certain relationships, like, you know, there's a conflict of interest for one person to help another person that they're too close to, you know, like you can't see the full picture for what it is when you're so involved. And so that's really amazing that you were able to give yourself that space and take that step back. So yeah, what would you say to anybody who's in a space right now where they are considering, they're like, you know, doing the back and forth of what do I do? Should I leave? Should I stay? And they're feeling that fear.
Yeah. Give yourself space. You already said that. Give yourself space. But I think we really need to take time to, using your term, zoom out and also zoom in. And when I say zoom in, like really drop into your body, drop into your heart, and really like think about what do you really want? Like, what do you really want? Not the surface level, I want a paycheck and, all this. Like, go deep. Like, what do you really, really, really want?
That's such an important question. And it can be asked time and time again, right? Like,
Yeah, you could ask yourself that daily. And if you have a really tough time, because I'm sure, Millie, you will know this with clients, because I'm sure you would ask people, well, what is it that you want? Because when it comes to manifestation, we got to know what we want. Otherwise, like,
fundamental.
It's just not going to happen. But
yeah.
One thing that I found helpful too is actually, when you're really blocked there, write down what you don't want anymore. Right? Write down what you don't want, and then look at it and think, what's the opposite of that?
Yeah. And sometimes that's all we can come up with was like, well, I don't want this and I don't want that. And it's the second step is so important and so integral, right? Because a lot of times people don't know what they want, and I believe they don't know what they want because they're out of touch with who they really are. Right? They've lost connection to themselves. So when we reconnect to ourselves, then we can rediscover what we really want. But that second part of the equation of, okay, here's what we don't want. Well, what does that mean we do want? Because focusing on what we do want is so much more powerful for manifestation, because it's abundance, right? It's moving into like, ooh, desire, abundance. Whereas what we don't want is like moving away from scarcity, all of that jazz. So that flipping is such a key part of figuring it out. Even though I really don't like the expression figuring it out, I need to remove that from my vocabulary.
Oh my God, I love it. But that's
Feeling
so powerful. Yeah, you want to feel into it. And, the interesting thing is that in 2020, I wrote a book about my journey, Achieve with Grace. And in the book, I was really explaining the experiences I went through and ultimately what helped me recover from burnout and find a different way of approaching success and my goals and my vision. But one thing that I always came back to is the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we live. And so the big thing that I saw too was that back then I was so focused on what I didn't want. Right. I didn't want to be busy. I didn't want to be burned out. I didn't want to feel, like I had to work all the time. But that was the story I was telling myself. So I was really good at manifesting a really busy, really unfulfilling life for myself unintentionally. Right. And I think that is what I found so powerful with manifestation and starting to really understand it more, is that this connection piece between the stories that we tell ourselves, ultimately what we want, but then also being really intentional with the thoughts and words and actions that we take on a daily basis, even moment to moment basis, to help us, get there.
Yeah. That's what we talked about on your podcast was conscious manifestation, which is really just the intentionality behind it, because we are manifesting all the time. Like, you can't turn off manifestation because you attract from who you are, right? And you can't stop being because your consciousness is always happening, you can't turn that off. So even when you transition into another lifetime or dimension or after this, you're still, the consciousness is the constant, right? So yeah, that's the real intentionality behind it. So for you, telling us that you came from a world and a time in life where you didn't know about any of this stuff, of this energetic world, what was your first sort of exposure to manifestation, and how has your understanding of it evolved and grown since that time?
Wow. The first experience with manifestation, conscious manifestation.
Yes.
I think the most powerful first time I experienced it was actually in end of May of this past year, May 2021, was actually the first time I really like it hit me like a prick of walls, if you will, in a very good way. But it was the end of May, and I was at an event with my coaches, Jack and Rob, who announced the retreat in Costa Rica. And it was, I think they offered us like a special deal. Like if you jump in and you put your $5,000 deposit down, you could join the retreat, and you'd have to just lock in by the end of the month, end of May. And I got so triggered by the entire situation, because in my, like, there was a pull, and I was like, I know I'm meant to be there. Like, I know I'm meant to go there. Didn't know why I knew that I was meant to go there, but I've stopped questioning. Like, when I know, and I trust it. And at the same time, I was just not in a position to do it. I had invested in coaching. I was maxing out my credit cards. I was like, this is just like, it's just not going to happen. And I went into the, into the rabbit hole of like lack and everything that's wrong, that's going wrong right now. And I ended up on a call with Jack, and we walked through it. So having coaching through that trigger. And she said, well, ask for it. Like, if you really want it, if this is really a desire, the path, the solution to it will come. Just ask for it. It's like, if you're meant to be there, you will be there. And I was like, okay. And so I sat with it, and like I felt like good, and it sort of moved just through those emotions. And I was like, yeah, like I want to be going to this retreat. I know I'm meant to be there. So, and I literally had this like feeling of help. And then because I'm a non-specific manifester, for me, it was really the feeling. So what I started to do, and this helps me, so for anybody out there who's a non-specific manifester, who's not supposed to be specific, but really focus more on the feeling of what that experience would be like, I started looking at places to stay. I started looking at the area. I looked up flights, and I was thinking about what it would be like to book the flight and to get there and to be in that space and to float in the pool with champagne. And so that was really for me the thing. And so I did it. And literally within, I kid you not, 48 hours of that conversation and me starting to focus on this, a painful client dropped in, amazing client dropped in, and it paid off my credit card. There was still enough left for the deposit, and I locked it in. And I was like, wow. And it taught me so much about, conscious manifestation, but also trusting that when things are meant to be, they can manifest quickly, and a lot of things can happen in a very short amount of time.
Yes, they can. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that story. I saw you having a good time at the retreat because, we connected through Jack and Rob, because I was in their mastermind for 6 months. So yeah, that's beautiful to see. And just to go back to what you said there about a non-specific manifester, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, in your human design chart, if you look up your human design chart, which you can do for free at mybodygraph.com or jovianarchive.com, if you look at your graph, there are 4 arrows around your head. The bottom right hand corner, if it's pointing away from your head, you are a non-specific manifester. If it's pointing towards your head, you are a specific manifester. And so if you're specific, that means you need to know the exact details of what you want. If you're non-specific, it's more based on feeling what you want to feel when you get to the destination, the state of the wish fulfilled. And I just want to say that our human design seems very similar, because I'm a 3/5 emotional generator, not Manny-Gen, but generator. And I also am a non-specific manifester too. So that is cool. That is very cool. Okay, so coming back to the initial question there of how has your view or knowledge or experience with manifestation evolved since that time?
Really honoring the emotional connection and feeling that I'm after through every experience that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I really learned that, we're so attached to outcomes, and we've been so conditioned to be clear, right? And so it's interesting too, because all of my other arrows point the other way, which I have learned is more the masculine structure, habitual, and then only this one is pointing left. I hope I'm getting that right. I'm like, it's like
I think it
looking
should
at
be. I think it should be
it's
pointing right.
reversed. Yeah, I think it's pointing right.
Yes.
Thank you for helping with that. I'm like looking at my screen as if I'm seeing my chart, trying to like figure out which, but anyways, it's the one that's pointing the other way. And so really, for me, it's a combination of honoring my emotions and really learning, generally, even as an emotional authority, to really honor my emotions and to allow them to be a part of me as much as anything else, without making them mean anything. That's a really big one. And having compassion, which you really helped me anchor in more when I took one of your programs later in 2021.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. And then the other really big one, Millie, is trust.
Yes.
Trust that everything is on its way.
And
And just like, it's so interesting because when we think about trust, like, it's not a strategy. Right? Like, you can't apply it as a strategy. You can't like, you can't make yourself trust. Like, I have really found that it's continuously experiencing it and consciously reminding yourself that trust was a part of it.
Yeah, trust in yourself and trust in the universe, right? Trust in what's to come. And I was thinking about when you said you had the conversation with Jack, and she said, if you're meant to be there, you're meant to be there, right? And I don't know if this comes up for other people, but in my experience with hearing something like that in the past, I would have thought something like, well, if I'm not meant to be there, maybe that means that I'm not good enough to be there. Or if I'm not meant to be there, maybe it means that I didn't measure up in some way, if the manifestation doesn't come through. And one of my major missions is to remove shame from the entire whole world of manifestation, because I do feel it's pretty pervasive, and I don't think that enough people talk about it. So when we talk about that, like, if it's meant for me or not meant for me, and the trust around that, I think that the lesson there is, it's not, if it doesn't come through, it doesn't mean you weren't good enough or anything like that. It means that we just need to lean into the trust that it means that something better or more suited to you is on its way. And so that shift from disappointment, because I feel like we feel disappointed because we're so attached to it. Like, well, I hope I'm meant for it. I really hope I'm meant for it. And then when it doesn't come through, we feel let down, we feel disappointed, but shifting from that disappointment into a curiosity. That's what I feel is there. And then that trust and curiosity go hand in hand, right? I feel like you can't be in that playful, curious energy unless you have the trust, right? So what helps you cultivate trust?
What helped me cultivate trust?
Or ongoing, like, what's your practice there of deepening your trust?
I think for me, it's adding the word yet behind things. So if something doesn't, like Costa Rica, for example, instead of thinking, actually, there's two ways. I'm going to explain this. Like, there's two ways I'm doing this. So one, with Costa Rica, actually, I had such a strong, I don't even know. I just knew I was like, I've never had a pull this strong to go somewhere or be somewhere. So one thing that I felt with that was, if it's not meant, so there is a yet, if it's not yet meant for this year, I am meant to go there at some point. And so there is that release from the timeline for me that helps me trust. So rather than being like, it can only work if it happens in this time frame, to really be like, it's going to happen. And it's not up to me when.
Yeah, exactly. That's the detaching from the timeline is so necessary. And sometimes it's really hard to detach from timelines because we feel like there's deadlines, right? Like, oh, if I don't do it by this time, I'm going to miss out on it, or I'll miss the opportunity, or I have to do this by this date, or there's going to be a penalty, or I'll lose something or whatever, right? So it's just trusting that even if it looks like it's going to go badly, that maybe that, perceived like bad, I'm doing air quotes, outcome will actually lead to something that you couldn't even imagine yet, right? Like this weird cascade or domino effect of events can lead you to something that's absolutely wonderful, right?
Absolutely. And I feel like too, this for me is something that like I've been practicing for a long time, is to really focus more on the vision and ultimately how I would feel in that experience. And I did that before I knew that I was an emotional authority. So obviously like my my being knew, my soul knew that there's a different kind of experience. But what really helps me detach from timelines is really keeping my focus on how I desire to feel when I get there, because we can feel those emotions now. So I actually get to have the experience of how I desire to feel in like my biggest, brightest, most beautiful vision that I have for my life and my business now. Yeah. And that was a pivotal thing for me, because I started to make decisions in the now based on how I feel and based on how they make me feel, including taking action. So that helped, and that removed the timeline quite naturally for me.
Yes.
Because it can be tough, right? And especially in business, when you're in business for yourself as an entrepreneur. And the biggest thing for me that has always been, like when it comes to clients, right? And conversations, and the reality is you're going to hear a lot of people say no. And when you hear somebody saying no, what are you going to do, right? Can you anchor into the fact that there's always somebody else behind them, right? There's always something else coming. If an opportunity falls through, like you say, it might just be the opportunity that needs to get out of the way. So what needs to come in can actually come in. And so this belay and these also like shifting your beliefs plus you is such a big part of that trust piece too. And so it's also, again, reminders. And for me, writing it down, like I journal, and I really consciously journal around when I felt like something was really happening naturally and it was meant to be and things just flow. I write it down, because that way it's like, it's black and white in front of me. It's almost like I'm creating my own evidence.
Yeah,
that it's all happening.
Yeah, the evidence journaling is a really cool exercise to do. And I want to emphasize the part about feeling it now, right? Because manifestation is happening and attracting based on who you are now, right? So it's really about that living from the state of the wish fulfilled now. It's not looking towards it. It's looking to find the ways that you can make it realer and realer in this moment, because then you are being that person, right? You're being the person who already has it. And so when you make decisions, they're going to be in alignment with the end result, right? So I love that you said that and you brought it up, to bring the feelings into the moment. And I teach this all the time too. It's like, well, how do you want to feel? And how can you bring those feelings into your day-to-day world now, right? So if you want to feel abundant, what can you do today that makes you feel more abundant, right? Is that what you do too?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And that's what I feel like it ties it back to how we started this conversation on the masculine and feminine, because sometimes for me is, this abundance and overflow are actually the words for me for 2022.
Oh, nice.
And so, and that is what I experienced on the retreat in Costa Rica. That feeling of so much abundance and overflow, I couldn't even comprehend it. Like it's hard to express, but it was it was really like a soul awakening trip for me. But
Yeah.
those two things really stuck, and so much, like, something just shifted energetically. I tuned in, as you like to say. I found a much cleaner frequency on my radio station.
Yeah.
Because I love that you use this expression. And so that's what I do. Like, if I desire to feel like, what does it mean? Like abundance of overflow, like what choice would I make today? What choice would I make in my business? How would I show up? Right. And that can come in all these different shapes of forms, but that's literally what I do.
Yeah. So you're tuned into the frequency of the life that you desire, of the person that has that life. So you're clear on it, and you're clear on what decisions are made from that frequency, right? Yeah, I really like that. And I like that you referenced something that I talk about. My ego got a cute little boost.
Oh, well, I love what you do. And like, you really like, there's this exercise that you had us do with the hue part of yourself. You can probably explain this way better than me, because anyways, but still to this date, when I feel like when I feel like out of alignment, when I'm in a wobble, when I'm in a doubt, I visualize that hue glowing version statue.
Oh, the gold, like
the golden, yes,
yeah,
thank
yes,
you,
okay,
of me. And I feel it coming. Like, I literally, it's at a point now where I'm like, I get like a little like body
tingle.
buzz.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, and I just repeat it like until I sort of feel like grounded again. And then I, do a lot of like, I write, I journal a lot. I write that's just my way of like, I need to write it down by hand, not on my computer.
Yeah. And hand. Everybody's got their way, right? Like, that's another thing in manifestation, is that there is no one right way about it. Like, you don't just need to journal. You don't just need to visualize. You don't just need to, you can manifest while you exercise, you can manifest while you're dancing in the kitchen. Like, I really want to remove those barriers that, busy women like encounter, where it's like time, like, I don't have any time to do all these rituals and, burning Palo Santo and pulling angel cards and like all beautiful things to do. And I also do those things too, but like, just removing that, barrier to it. So, okay. So coming back to the final couple questions that I have for you. Okay. In manifestation, what would you say is sort of one misunderstanding or myth that you've like busted through on your own?
The big one for me is that you have to be high vibe all the time. So this whole idea that you can't go through tough experiences and moments that feel life-shattering, and that somehow would stop things coming to you. So really understanding that we can hold space for those moments where we feel the bottom of everything without losing touch with what we're calling in and ultimately what we want. And that was a big one. And again, too, I feel like bringing this back to what you said, releasing the shame and guilt of having just sometimes a really shitty time with life. And we all have that. And we got to honor the fact that we're human beings, and that things, like if things would always be high vibe and all good, I don't believe that life would be as vibrant and colorful, because there's always, I mean, there's a shadow to a light, right? There's yin and yang.
It's required,
there's
yeah.
always. And so that was the biggest one for me, because I would shame myself a lot for, you know, feeling sadness around something or having something happen in my life, and then being like, well, now because of this, like nothing can come in. I mean, you know, there's that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say that we came here to have the full range of human experience. Like we came here to experience the full range of human emotion, right? So it's like, come on, why are we shaming ourselves for the experience we signed up for? Right? Okay.
I love it.
So my final question that I ask everybody on the show is, what is it that you are currently manifesting?
Ooh, what is it that I'm currently manifesting? So really, for me, experience life and my business in complete like abundance and overflow. So I'm really focusing on the feeling of that. And more tangibly, it's really rocking where I'm at in my business, seeing that grow, but really honestly and truly being in an abundant state of mind and experiencing that in any shape and form possible. Whether it's support I have, whether it's the conversations I have, whether it's the moments in between where I sit on my sofa and I'm like, wow, like it's kind of the mix of gratitude as well, where it's like so much gratitude, it makes you cry.
Oh, I love those moments. They're the best. So I want to thank you. I'm so grateful for you for coming on the show and having this beautiful conversation with me. And I would love for you to let the audience know where they can find you, and if there's any, offers you want to let us know about.
Amazing. Yes, absolutely. It was so amazing. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for having me. If you want to continue to follow me and know what I'm up to, my Instagram at Theresa Lambert Coaching is literally the best place, and come hang out with me. I share a ton of value there if you're building your business. And I also show up and I pull affirmations every morning that I share. So it's a really great place to just come hang and be. And if you want to explore working together, if you want to come deeper into my world, there's a really incredible, fun place that I created. And it's actually, it is brand new to 2022, and it's the Confident CEO Club. And it's literally 1 year of support, strategic support for your business. And it's a membership to all of my live paid courses and masterclasses. And I have really fun activations planned, like a 10K in 10-week challenge. There's like so much fun stuff coming down, but it's really helping you put that masculine container and support and safety in place so that you can have the creativeness and the spaciousness and the flow and the life that ultimately you desire. So it's really a really fun place to be. And I'm going to pour a lot of my energy in that space this year. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. Okay, well, go and find everything you need to find in the show notes, because I'm going to link all of those things for Theresa. And thank you all for listening to another amazing episode, and we will catch you later. Hey there, Millie popping in to let you know about this incredible new creation that I have for you. I have created a 5-minute manifestation method for moms, which involves a 5-minute daily visualization along with 2-minute journal prompts, because I want to remove all the barriers possible for you to manifest your dream life. And I want to remove any myths that it takes a lot of time or any kind of fancy rituals to make your dreams come true. So if you want to grab a copy of this for free, you can find it in the show notes.